Welcome and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode until the question and answer session of today's call. At that time, if you would like to ask a question, please press star 1. Today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn the meeting over to Ms. Amber Kuhar-Bell. Thank you. You may begin.
Hi, welcome to the CDFI Program's Financial Assistance webinar. I'm joined by several team members, Andrew Schlack, Elizabeth Hoffman, Roop Chase, Clint Hastings, and Candace Herring. We'll be here to answer your questions. I'm going to turn it over to Andrew, Elizabeth, and Roop to walk you through the presentation, and then we'll open it up for question and answers. I'm really excited that you joined us, and enjoy the presentation.
Great, thanks Amber. This is Andrew Schlack. Before we get into the heart of today's presentation, I just want to navigate everyone to the website where all of the materials that we're going to be discussing today can be downloaded. We have a one-stop shop for all of the resources that are going to be relevant for putting together your FA or TA applications for the current year 2020. So really quickly, if you go to our homepage, which is cdfifund.gov, and hover over Programs and Training, underneath Programs, down here we have the CDFI program and Native Initiatives. Either of these links will take you to the correct place if you're interested in the Native Initiatives. These pages are symmetrical with respect to the application. So in the interest of time, why don't I just go through as a Native CDFI. If I click on Native Initiatives, it brings me to the landing page for the Native Initiative program, and at the very bottom of each of these pages is our 5-step how to apply application process. Materials for today and in general in putting together your application will be accessed through this step 2 on apply. So if I click on step 2 and apply, it will take me to this home base for all materials that are relevant for the current funding year, which is 2020. So we've put here a handy schedule of timeline. Roop and Elizabeth will be talking about some of these key dates that are upcoming. We also include links to all of the webinars and recorded materials. So perhaps you have a colleague that wasn't able to join today. All of the recordings and webinars that we've have recorded will be posted here once they become available. Yesterday we convened a similar workshop for technical assistance applicants. Here's the one that we're here for today, which is the financial assistance application webinar. And again, as soon as this is available for a download, this information will go away and it'll just be an Access webinar recording link. And that'll take you to YouTube, and you can share that with friends and colleagues who may not have been able to participate or join in today's call. Jump back to the presentation. Actually, before I do that, why don't I also show just the resources that we're going to be referring to today. So some key documents. Again, we have a number of documents. All these documents are relevant for putting together your application. You'll want to refer to these and know them thoroughly as you explore responses and data that's going to be collected as part of your application. But the 3 documents we'll be covering, focused primarily on today, are the NOFA, which is this first link, the Financial Assistance Guidance document, which is the 3rd link here, and then the Frequently Asked Questions, which were published yesterday. So you can see that we update materials and as the materials are updated, we'll put a new, born on date, if you will. So yesterday, March 10th, we published these frequently asked questions. We published some revisions to the application guidance, and you can see, just to highlight where these revisions show up, they'll show up as highlighted sections within the table of contents so that you can easily identify information that's been updated. So, for example, on March 3rd, there were 4 clarifications that were published. So if you downloaded these back on February 20th when the application came out, you'll want to re-download these just so that you have the most current draft. Let's jump back to the presentation and jump on into the agenda. I'm going to be introducing colleague Ruth Chase, who will kick us off, but a couple of housekeeping items just to look ahead at the agenda. It's about a 30-minute presentation, and then we'd like to leave as much time for question and answer. So if you think of questions, clarifications that you'd like to ask, our operator, Allison, will coordinate the question and answer after the presentation by Ruth and Elizabeth. This is today's agenda. Teeing us up, a couple of things that we will not be covering today, past funding round decisions. So this is really forward looking for fiscal year 2020. The second item we won't be covering in detail are instructions on how to enter data into our Awards Management and Information System, or AMIS. And then the third topic, this is pertinent to the financial assistance applicants in need of matching funds, and we'll talk about those requirements as part of this presentation. But we're not going to dive into specifics about responding to questions about matching funds particular to your organization that wouldn't necessarily apply to the whole group. Those questions are best addressed through specific service requests. So the best way to ask any questions outside of the context of these webinars is to submit a service request, and a team member will be able to respond to you in the most efficient way. So let's pass this over. I'm going to introduce Ruth Chase, who's going to take us through this part of the presentation. Ruth.
All right, thanks, Andrew. So in these next few slides, we're going to give you an overview of the CDFI fund, and after that, we're going to start delving into the FA programs. So our mission is to expand economic opportunity for underserved people and communities, and we do this by supporting the growth and capacity of community development, financial institutions, and service providers. Our vision is an America where all people and communities have access to the investment capital and financial services that they need. And these are some of the programs that we offer at the CDFI Fund. Today's focus is going to be on the CDFI and the NACA financial assistance programs. So the purpose of the CDFI and the NACA program is to promote economic revitalization and community development, along with helping to build the capacity of community-based financial institutions and service providers serving rural and urban low-income people. Okay, so we're going to jump into the FA programs. So for the CDFI base FA, only certified CDFIs are eligible to apply, and you would need to be certified as of the date of the publication of the NOFA, which is February 20th, 2020. Core-based FA applicants must have at least half of the matching funds in hand or committed at the time of application. The CECA maximum award size is $700,000, and the minimum is $350,000. The core maximum is $1 million, while the minimum is $500,000. The forms of award for CECA will be in grants, while for core, it will be based upon the type of matching funds. And finally, base FA must be expended for activities falling in 5 eligible categories. Base FA awards may be expended for these 11 eligible lines of business. And the reporting period will be 3 years as specified in the assistance agreement. For the NACA base FA, similar to the CDFI base FA, only certified CDFIs may apply. Applicants must also demonstrate that at least 50% of past activities were in one or more Native communities. The certification target market must have one or more of the characteristics mentioned in the third bullet. And the maximum award is $1 million, while the minimum is $150,000. Matching funds are waived for fiscal year 20, and all NACA-based FA awards will be made in the form of a grant. The NACA-based FA awards must be expended for eligible activities falling in 5 categories. Like CDFI FA, there are 11 eligible lines of business. Also similar to CDFI FA, the NACA FA reporting period will be 3 years. Please note, NACA applicants may apply for FA under both NACA and CDFI. However, they may only receive one award per funding round. If you apply under and are selected for an award in both NACA and CDFI, you will be provided the FA award under the CDFI program. Hence, this is probably going to be a consideration from a matching funds perspective, which has been waived for NACA in fiscal year 20. Okay, and now I'm going to pass it on to Elizabeth, and she's going to be talking about the FA supplementals.
Thanks, Roop. So the next set of slides is going to take us through the 3 supplemental FA programs, starting with the Persistent Poverty Counties Financial Assistance, and then also Disability Funds Financial Assistance, and Healthy Food Financing Initiative Financial Assistance. So your organization may choose to apply for any or all of these supplementals, along with your base FA application. And as we'll discuss more later, only groups that receive their base FA award will go on to be considered for the supplementals. In other words, an organization cannot just get a PPC or DFFA award, for example. So the eligibility requirements, award sizes, and eligible activities are all specified in the NOFA, and we'll touch on some highlights here. For PPC, certified CDFIs that submit a base application may apply. You'll note for the core PPC applicants, matching funds do apply, but not for CICA or NACA applicants. PPC awards will range from a maximum of $300,000 to a minimum of $100,000. The forms of awards and eligible activities are substantially similar to the base FA program. The eligible lines of business are also the same 11 as the base FA program, and the reporting period is 3 years. For the Disability Funds Financial Assistance application, for our core applicants, matching funds will again apply for this, should you choose to apply. For CICA or NACA applicants, there are not matching funds for the disability program. The award amounts will range from $500,000 as the maximum to a minimum of $100,000. And the eligible activities, as you can see in the last row, are in 4 out of the 5 categories of base FA. The eligible lines of business, we have again the same 11 as the base FA, and a reporting period of 3 years. The last available supplemental program you may choose to apply for is the Healthy Food Financing Initiative. Note that for all applicants, no one has to do matching funds for HFFI. In statute, the award amount can go up as high as $5 million with a minimum award of $500,000, but please know we're estimating an average of about $1.6 million for this year. The eligible activities are similar 4 out of the 5 categories there, and again in a reporting period of 3 years. Now we will turn to the next part of the presentation on how to complete the narrative responses and application data. In this section, we'll look at what applicants need to submit in AMIS to apply, the majority of the application being done through AMIS. That acronym stands for the Awards Information Management System. And if you haven't logged into your AMIS account for a little while, you'll want to do so right after this presentation to make sure all your contacts are up to date, etc. There are 4 or 5 components of the application, depending on if you are a core FA applicant. If so, you'll see that second one of matching funds applies to you. But all applicants will submit the funding application details, and then a narrative response, application financial data, and FA objectives, which we'll delve into a little further. For the supplemental programs, all 3 you can apply for directly in AMIS this year along with your base FA, and they will each have also a funding application detail, narratives, and then charts and data. Several attachments are required for the application. Again, it depends on your applicant type. For example, all applicants will upload key staff resumes and organizational charts. If you are a non-regulated institution, you will be uploading audited financial statements and a management letter for the most recent fiscal year. Next slide, please. There's also a provision to upload a statement in lieu of a management letter if you have not received one from your auditor. And the FA guidance goes into quite a bit of detail on what we're looking for here, including having a sample management letter in an appendix, as well as a template you can use for your statement in lieu of management letter if you did not receive one. If you are an applicant without audited financial statements, we'll need your unaudited financial statements. And all applicants will submit current year-to-date financial statements. And if you're applying as a community partnership, then we'll need that as well. This slide pertains to our FA core applicants, as we'll be needing to submit matching funds information. If you are using retained earnings for your matching funds, there is a retained earnings calculator Excel workbook available through that Step 2 Apply website that Andrew showed us at the beginning. If you need that, you'll also upload your call reports. And if you have any equity investments or deposits, you'll need to upload specific matching funds documentation. On the website, there is a whole additional set of guidance specific around matching funds, which contains a lot of the details to the answers of common questions. All FA applicants will also complete narrative responses. There are about 15, and they're divided into different sections, ranging through your business strategy, products and services, management. And this year we've revamped the FA application guidance, so I encourage you to take a look there. There's a section that lists all the narrative questions, the character counts, and some hints and tips for filling it out. If you are selected to receive an award, you must use the base or supplemental awards for FA eligible activities. Those largely must occur in the eligible market or target market. And the different eligible activities are listed here by institution type for reference.
Okay, so in this next few slides, we're going to be discussing the 7 FA objectives along with some of the important considerations when deciding on your objectives. And these are the 7 FA objectives that you can select. So keep in mind that although you may select more than one FA objective, it does not make you more competitive. Also note your FA objectives will be included as PG&Ms in your assistance agreement based on what you entered in the application. We will not automatically form a pro rata reduction if you do not receive the full base FA request. So please be realistic when you select your FA objectives and the associated projections. Off-balance sheet activity may not be used to meet your PG&Ms, so make sure you don't include this in your projections. And also your FA objectives must be in eligible markets and or your approved target markets. For FA objectives 1.1, increasing volume of financial products, and 1.2, increasing volume of financial services, the PG&M will be the sum of the 3 years of projected products or services reflected in the application. The 3 years of projected activity must exceed the sum of the historic 3-year activity. So for FA Objective 1.1, this will also include the base FA award. And finally, if you select one or both of these objectives and have an FY18 or FY19 award with either of these objectives, then you must exceed the volume projected in the prior assistance agreements for any overlapping years. For FA Objective 1.3, serve new geographic areas. This would be an area that accounts for 5% or less of the outstanding portfolio averaged over the 3 most recent historic fiscal years. Serving a new geographic area may or may not impact or change your approved target market. The corresponding PG&M will be based upon the projected activity over the 3-year period of performance in a new geographic area and will be reflected in your assistance agreement. For FA Objectives 1.4, New Financial Products, 1.5, New Financial Services, and 1.6, New Developmental Services, the proposed new FA objective must be 5% or less of your outstanding portfolio as of the most recently completed historic fiscal year. This also includes 5% or less of the total clients that you served if you select FA Objective 1.6. The corresponding PG&M will be based upon the projected activity over the 3-year period of performance in your application and will be reflected in your assistance agreement as such. For FA Objective 1.7, serving new targeted populations, in order to select this objective, you must propose to serve a new targeted population that you are not certified to serve and have not submitted an application to become certified to serve as of the application deadline. Keep in mind, serving a targeted population that you are already qualified to serve, even if it is in a new geographic area, does not qualify.
Now we'll talk a bit more about the supplemental programs of PPCFA, DFFA, and HFFI-FA in terms of what's required in the application, how they're evaluated, and what kinds of PG&Ms will apply for those organizations who receive supplemental awards. Again, this is all detailed in the guidance, but we'll touch on a couple highlights here. As mentioned, PPC awards and all the supplements are provided as a supplement to the base FA awards. Only those organizations who receive base FA awards will go on to be evaluated for a supplemental. PPC award amounts will be based on things like the applicant's overall portfolio size, track record of deployment, and pipeline of projects in PPC. And those selected to receive PPC awards will be required to close 100% of the award for equivalent funds in financial products by the end of the PPC. There are 2 interim goals of 5% and 50% as well for the first 2 years. The FFA is also available as a supplement, and you apply directly within AMIS. Applicants need to put in their requested award amount specifically for the DFFA funding. And successful DFFA applicants will demonstrate that they are using their various products and services to address the challenges of individuals with disabilities. There's 4 main example categories here: asset development, affordable, accessible, and safe housing, employment opportunities, and access to assistive products and services. For the purposes of DFFA, the CDFI fund follows the ADA, American with Disabilities Act definition, and applicants selected to receive DFFA will receive a PG&M that they must close that amount equal to or greater than 85% of their total DFFA award. Turning to our last supplement of HFFI, similarly, it is a supplement to those already receiving a base FA award, evaluated independently. You'll put in your award request amount in AMIS when you put in and submit the HFFI application in AMIS along with your base FA application. And HFFI activities will include healthy food retail and non-retail outfits. For example, investments supporting retail stores or wholesale operations upgrading to offer a range of healthy food products. The CDFI fund follows USDA definitions, which are available. Both the HFFI application and the DFFA application have separate guidance documents available on our main page in AMIS that Andrew showed. And for HFFI, you'll note there will be some specific requirements if you receive an award regarding closing financial products in food deserts and that are specifically for retail outlets. So be sure to take a look at those as you're applying.
Okay, so these next set of slides, we're going to be discussing the matching funds and some of the information regarding the documentation requirements and so forth. So matching funds are required for all CDFI core applicants, including for base FA, disability FA, and PPC. The FA award will depend upon the type of matching funds provided. For example, if your matching funds are a grant, then your award will also be in the form of a grant. If you provide evidence that you must provide evidence that you have at least 50% of the award request through either in-hand or committed matching funds when submitting your application. Matching funds received between January 1st, 2018 and January 15th, 2021 are considered in-hand. Core FA recipients must have 100% of the matching funds in-hand before an award payment. If you have less than 100% of the matching funds in hand at application, you will need to provide evidence showing all matching funds are in hand by January 31st, 2021. The matching funds requirement for CECA, NACA, and HFFI has been waived for fiscal year 20. Also worth mentioning, even though we covered this in yesterday's webinar, matching funds are not required for TA. So this slide illustrates the types of matching funds. Keep in mind that matching funds must be non-federal, and also refer to Table 9 in the NOFA and the matching funds guidance for details. And this slide here has the matching funds discussion and when you have matching funds in the form of a loan. So loans used as matching funds must have a term of at least 3 years. If you did use a loan, then you will receive your award in the form of a loan. The terms of the award will be in accordance to the CDFI fund's standardized loan terms. And also worth mentioning is we will not permit a recipient to change the form of award from a loan to a grant. All right, so this slide here illustrates the standard loan product and associated terms and conditions. In the next couple of slides, we're going to cover the retained earnings. So retained earnings will be matched in the form of a grant. And if you use retained earnings as matching funds, you must specify this in your application. We also provide a unique calculator depending on the type of financial institution that you are. The calculator adjusts your financial statements or call reports for revenue and expenses derived from federal sources and previously used matching funds. We will review your retained earnings calculator and ensure that all the reported figures match the corresponding figures in your audited financials or your call reports. And if you use unaudited financial statements, then the retained earnings will be considered committed and will only be considered in hand once confirmed by audited financial statements or call reports. We no longer require applicants and recipients to provide documentation of matching funds at the time of application. However, if you use retained earnings, shares and deposits, equity investments, or secondary capital, then you will provide supporting documentation at the time of application. This slide discusses the matching funds section in AMIS. Core FA applicants applying for base FA, disability FA, and PPC must complete the matching funds section in AMIS. If you are submitting retained earnings, you must also submit a retained earnings calculator as an attachment to your application. So the first bullet here provides the required information for each of the matching fund sources. And separately, you will be required to make attestations for each of the matching fund sources. As a reminder, please refer to the FY20 NOFA and the matching funds guidance for acceptable forms of matching funds documentation. All right, let's see if you were paying attention. Elizabeth, true or false? Applicants are required to enter matching funds information directly into AMIS.
I'm going to go with true. I believe there's a whole separate section just for matching funds.
That is correct. True or false? Core FA applicants must provide evidence that they have matching funds of at least 50% of their requested award amount in hand or committed at the time of application submission.
That is also true.
That's correct. True or false? Core FA applicants must submit documentation for grant and loan sources at the time of application submission.
Ooh, this looks like a trick question. I think you're trying to trick us up. It's false, because for grants and loans, you do not need to submit it at the time of application. But, of course, you need to have that on hand should we ask for it later.
Yeah, good job, Elizabeth. You didn't fall for that. And just to keep in mind, if you use retained earnings, shares and deposits, equity investments, or secondary capital, then you will be submitting documentation. And the last question, true or false? Retained earnings must be calculated using the CDFI Funds Institution Type calculator.
I'm going to go with true, and that's why you and I have been working on that Excel workbook group, and that it's going to help people and be the great and necessary thing to upload.
That's correct. Elizabeth, you never cease to amaze me.
Excellent. I always love getting 100% on quizzes. All right. To finish up here, our last part of our planned presentation, we'll go over the application review selection process and a few reminders. We've got a two-step process to apply, and it requires separate systems. So we've highlighted this information, but please take into account our first deadline is coming up on March 23rd. That's the deadline for having an AMIS account and your EIN and DUNS numbers entered correctly in that AMIS account. Please double check, since that's how we will be able to link you to grants.gov, our other system. Pardon me, not our system, but the other system that you need to use to submit your SF-424. And if you're having issues with grants.gov, please contact them directly. The CDFI Fund does not administer that system. And please take note of this March 24th deadline. You need to have your SF-424 submitted and receive confirmation that it's validated, and submit it now, submit it early, because it is so heartbreaking to us on March 24th if we get questions from people who had a power outage at their home the night before and they couldn't get it submitted. We can't make any exceptions in that case. I know you're all going to make the March 23rd deadline, so then your step 2 will be to complete all the rest of the application materials, the narratives, financials, etc., in AMIS, and that deadline is April 21st. Looking ahead to the award payments, in addition to the total amount that you're going to request in AMIS, each applicant indicates your initial payment amount. So that is going to be what you expect to spend in the first 12 months. And if you're applying for the supplementals, you'll enter each one separately. So how much from your base FA, HSFI, etc. The final initial payment will be combined to determine the eligible matching funds. And this, for those of you who received FOA awards in 2019 in your assistance agreements, you had this TG&M 5.1 that will be in the FY20 assistance agreements as well, specifying some things about spending the monies of the award. And 90% of that first payment amount needs to be spent within the first 12 months. So go ahead and just tell us, reasonably what you think you can expend in the first 12 months. It's easy to draw down the rest of your award afterwards. And you must spend 100% of the entire award within the full period of performance. Please note that the recipient will not receive an initial payment until you have 100% of matching funds in hand. So as Rupa indicated at the time of submission, it's 50% in hand or committed, but before you actually receive that award, we'll need to have documentation that it's all in hand. And you must state the specific award dollar amounts in AMIS. You can't go forward with your application if you don't show us the money. Here's a final reminder of our important deadline. Coming up March 23rd for the AMIS account, EIN and DUNS number entered, and to have your SF-424 submitted and validated by grants.gov. April 17th is the last day that you can contact us with questions specific to the program. That's 2 business days before the final deadline on April 21st, when there's a 5 p.m. deadline for contacting IT with any technical issues, and then an 11:59 p.m. deadline for submitting it. But don't be the person submitting it at 11:59 p.m. Submit early And that way you can just ensure that if you're having any internet problems on your end, it's not going to affect your application. Here's some contact information. You can reach us at the CDFI Help. You might have questions for our certification, compliance, and monitoring team. Here is the email for AMIS. But really, for all three of us groups here, AMIS, CC, and ENS, the best way, the fastest way to get your question answered is to submit a service request through AMIS. If you have questions for grants.gov or SAM.gov, note that the CDFI Fund does not administer those websites, so please contact them directly. And as a final reminder, here are the full links to those pages Andrew showed us where we can find the CDFI Fund and NACA program materials. As you noted, we will be adding application materials to these websites on a rolling basis, and there were just some FAQs added yesterday if you haven't had a chance to check those out yet.
Terrific. Thank you, Elizabeth and Ruth, for taking us through that great presentation of the financial assistance application. What we're going to do, Allison, is open this up for questions and answers. So if you want to prompt the audience members with instructions on how to ask and questions, and we'll be able to respond. And as callers call in, we've got a couple of questions teed up already. So Allison, please provide the instructions.
Yes, sir. Thank you. If you would like to ask a question over the phones, please press *1 and record your first and last name. And if you would like to withdraw your question on the phones, you may press *2. Once again, to ask a question on the phones, please press *1. Just a few moments for questions.
Great, thanks, Allison. So I know a couple of folks may have joined us a little late. I want to just re-navigate everyone to the resources that we have talked through today, just to make sure that everyone knows how to find these resources on the website from our homepage, cdfifund.gov, underneath Programs and Training Programs. Here's the CDFI program. I've already shown the Native initiatives. Right below that, let's go to the CDFI program. And from this main landing page, we'll go to the very bottom, which is the How to Apply 5-step process. We're going to click on Step 2, which is the Apply. And all the resources that Ruth and Elizabeth led us through, including the calendar, key dates. Again, don't be the last ones on March 23rd or April 21st, like we say. You know, you don't get extra points for being the last application in. So, you know, submit these early. And Amber actually has a point of information about the March 23rd deadline from grants.gov.
Yeah, so just to note, grants.gov, we do not manage that site. All information for your SF424 needs to go through grants.gov, but extra incentive not to wait till the last minute. We just noticed on grants.gov's website that they will be down the weekend before the deadline, so March 21st and 22nd. They will be open on the 23rd, which is our deadline. But don't wait. Again, make sure that you go to our guidance now, fill out the information. In the FA guidance documents, it walks you through how to answer every single one of the questions. You can do it now, make sure it's validated, and then it will display in your AMIS account. The other piece of guidance that I want to just direct you guys to is we have something called the base FA evaluation process document. I think it's really important that you guys have a question. You're like, oh, so I filled out this application. Now what happens? Well, you know, one of the things that I've committed to as the program manager here is increasing our transparency through our evaluation process to help you be successful. So for the base FA evaluation process, it's a 5-step process. And we describe in this document all of the questions that we ask and how we evaluate your process. So, you know, step 1 is eligibility. Step 2 is our financial analysis and compliance risk evaluation. Step 3 is where we look at your business plan based on your external reviewers. So one interesting thing about this process is once you pass eligibility, everybody starts fresh. once you pass your base financial analysis and compliance analysis, you could be the strongest CDFI, or you could barely get through. You all start fresh again in step 3. Over 99% of all applicants get through step 2. Step 3 is really where there's a separation in the evaluation of who's going to be a recipient or otherwise. And these are the exact questions that we ask our external reviewers. There's 2 external reviewers that will review your application. Please pay attention to these questions, because these are the questions that they're going to be asking. So when you write your application, make sure that somebody else can answer these 8 questions without making assumptions. That's going to be the key in order to help us understand your application. And then 70% of CECA and 60% of core applicants and 70% of NACA applicants will move on to the next stage. And again, you could be the highest scoring one from the external reviewers or the last one through on that 60%, and you all start fresh again, so that everybody starts at 0 again at this point. And then we really look at our policy objective review in step 4, which is 3 general areas. The economic distress, so the extent at which your CDFI is serving areas of economic distress. Policy objective of creating economic opportunities, so what's the extent to which your CDFI is creating economic opportunities within your communities. And third area is the community collaboration. Are you working within a larger system to leverage funds both on and off your balance sheet as part of a coordinated approach or otherwise, and really help us understand the results of your collaboration and how that leads to additional impact. At this point, everybody's going to be scored into 1 to 5 buckets, and then we move on to award size determination. So hopefully, I know that was really quick, but I wanted to walk everyone through what happens behind the curtain.
Great, thanks, Amber. Allison, we're ready for our first question.
Yes, sir. Our first question is from Margaret Smith. Your line is open. Once again, Margaret Smith, your line is now open.
Hello. What is the best way for us to work with SAM.gov to get accounts reactivated so we can submit the SF-424 if we're having any issues with SAM.gov?
So Margaret, this is Andrew. I'm just going to put these numbers back up on the screen. We've provided direct contact information. Again, we don't maintain or administer those systems, so we're unable to answer specific questions. The number for grants.gov here is on the screen if you have access to it, and SAM.gov as well. These 2 contact numbers and their emails are provided as a reference point. I'll leave this up here for your benefit. Does that help answer your question?
Thank you. And if someone submits the SF-424 on Monday, March 23rd, the deadline, is that enough time for it to get validated in order for us to still apply?
So if you go to the NOFA, towards the back, there's a guidance on estimated timeframes. Don't wait till the last minute, because you don't know what's going to happen. It can take a little while to get that that registration and things updated. So on page 37, table 11, grants.gov registration timeline. So we have no control over that time period. You can theoretically get it through if you submit on that last day, but that is something that is outside of our control.
And again, there's nothing precluding any organization who's already established to go in there even today and to get this ball rolling.
So if someone tries to do this on March 23rd, even though that's the deadline day, it might actually be too late at that point.
Yeah, because you don't know if the system rejects, you never know what's going to happen. And so it's best to be proactive and get in there as soon as possible. If you're waiting until the very last minute, anything can happen. and anything has happened, and that's a very unfortunate time because we simply cannot accept SF424s past this deadline. There's nothing precluding you from doing it sooner than later. We strongly advise not waiting until the last day.
If it is truly government error, we do have a provision that says you have 2 business days to submit a late submission request. But again, the CDFI fund is only going to allow a late submission in case of government error. That's listed on page 41 of the NOFA.
Yeah, and those government errors are less typical than, user error and not having it validated. So those errors can happen, but what has, par for the course in the past years, it's been user error and it's not been government error, and you're only going to discover user error if you're proactive and you do it early.
This is Elizabeth, just jumping in on that point. As we mentioned, there's a planned system outage of grants.gov. That will not be considered government error since it's been planned and announced. So just echoing my colleagues, yes, please get your SF424s in as soon as possible to give yourself the best chance of success.
And ensure your SAM.gov registration is active, because that does expire, so you have to reactivate that as well.
Okay, Allison, next question.
Our next question is from Alice Feenstra. Your line is now open.
Hi, thank you very much. So I have a couple questions about the initial payment and kind of what that means. So you're talking about 90% of the initial payment needs to be spent within the first 12 months. So my first question is, what do you mean by spent, and kind of what are you looking for in terms of information, documentation, or back from the CDFI in terms of how to let you know they have spent the award? And then my second question is, if they say they're going to spend half in year 1 and half in year 2, and then they get the first half spent in the first 6 months after the award, do they then have to wait another 6 months to get the second payment, or can they get that earlier, requested earlier?
Yeah, so thank you for your question. This is Amber, I can take it. I think you asked like 4 questions. I'm going to take them one by one.
No, it's only
one is the initial payment. What does it mean to be expended? So it's that you have allocated it towards an eligible FA activity. So for example, you put it towards your loan loss reserve into a contra asset account. You have made a loan with that money. You have paid someone's salary to provide development services, or if you're a regulated institution and you decided to use that money as capital reserves, that you've allocated it towards capital reserves. So that's what it means to be spent generally. The second part is how do you tell the CDFI fund? Well, there's an annual reporting requirement called the Uses of FA Award, where you specifically say how you use the money in accordance with the UAR and the assistance agreement. The third point that you had is say you decided to use that capital for lending capital, and you thought your pipeline was $500,000 and it turned out to be $1 million. As soon as you expended 90% of the first initial payment, you can request a subsequent payment request. So that can be the day after you allocated that 90%. It could be the day. So for example, we announced our awards in September 30th, and on September 30 or October 1st, you allocate that money to a loan, and then you want to, as soon as you get your assistance agreement, sign it. You can say, oh, we've spent that money, and you can go ahead and ask for the rest of your award.
So there's no downside in being conservative then?
It does take a couple of weeks probably to process the payment, but you can ask for it right away.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And I'd just say, adding on what Amber said, you know, right-sizing your initial payment amount in the application does help expedite the closing process. So you do want to, because there's no modification necessary if you get your first payment wrong. So to your point, it is prudent to make that right size with the actual projections that you're making and not have to modify that, because that could result in delay in closing on your assistance agreement if you are awarded funds.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Of course. Ellison, next question.
Our next question, I do apologize if I mispronounce your name. Sela Chang, your line is now open.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
You sound great.
Okay. My question is about the matching funds. I just want to make sure. So the last year we requested X amount, so let's say $1 million, and we only received a lesser amount of that, so let's say $700,000. Can we use the $300,000 that weren't used for the matching funds for this year's matching funds application?
Candace, you want to take that one?
Sure, this is Candace. You can, assuming it's still within the matching funds window in this funding round's NOFA.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Yeah, just to build on that matching funds questions, the CDFI fund does not manage the matching funds that your organization allocates to our awards or any other federal award. That's the responsibility of the CDFI. So we, at the CDFI fund, if you submit 10 sources and your award covers half of them, we're not going to tell you which 10 were used and which 10 were not used. Or which 5 were used and which 5 weren't used. That's your decision and your record keeping on which ones you've allocated to cover our award.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, and our next question is from Janine Espositos. Your line is now open.
Yes, thank you. I have a question about the PPC supplement. So if your FA objective is to expand into a new geography that is not in a PPC, but your organization is currently serving a PPC and will continue to serve it during the performance period, are you eligible to receive a PPC supplement?
Absolutely. The one of the things that's really beautiful about the CDFI program and the FA awards is we're investing in your organization, in your balance sheet. So these FA award funds can be used in any eligible category. To achieve the FA objectives, you can use any money on your balance sheet, right? You don't just use our FA awards. This isn't a project-based award. We're investing in your balance sheet. To achieve your FA objectives, you're using FA money or equivalent. So say you get a loan from ABC Bank, you can use that ABC Bank money to meet your FA objectives. And then the PPC, again, is for your balance sheet. So you'd have to use that PPC Supplemental Award specifically for loans in an eligible market in a PPC county, and that's based on your global track record. So when you complete your application, you're providing financials and data analysis for your entire portfolio, not just whatever new product or service that you want to do in that specific FA objective.
Thank you.
And we have no further questions at this time.
Great. Well, we'll hold the line here. A number of folks called in, perhaps a little after the start. We've got all these materials available on our website. And while Allison might be teeing up a few additional questions, why don't I just hop back to the website and show folks again where these materials and recordings will be available. Again, it's on the program page under Step 2. This recording and the others, as they become available, will be posted here under the access link. And just a heads up to, save the date, mark your calendars. 2 more webinars that will be scheduled will be specific question and answer webinars. So we've got one designed for CDFI program applicants on March 30th, 31st, the same time. So this will be after that key deadline again, everyone, of March 23rd for the SF424. It'll be after that deadline, but this one is on March 31st. There'll be questions and answers. So things that you were introduced to today as you're putting together your application, you want some additional time to brainstorm and think about things. If you want to put in a service request, we'll address any questions you have in real time, but we'll also hold space for a conversation on March 31st, again for CDFI applicants, and then a follow-up conversation which Clint Hastings is going to lead on April 1st, which will be for NACA targeted organizations and Native Initiatives program applicants. So just calling out those two dates that again are after this key deadline of March 23rd. Trying to buy us a little more time. Allison, any more questions?
Yes, sir, we do have a few. Our next question, again, I apologize if I mispronounce your name. Sui Guwong, your line is now open.
I think that's me, Julie Gould. So my question, hi. My question has to do with high poverty areas, and that it's a new data set for economic distress this year, and it's mentioned in a footnote that it was in the congressional appropriations language. So is there any more detail you can give us about high poverty areas and responding to question 2?
Yeah, so this is Amber. I think what's important to note is that in question 2, we're really looking at who is the communities that you serve, and we're looking to tease out, what is the economic distress of the communities you serve. So it's a data point that you can use to help describe your community.
Thanks, Amber. And do you know, just one follow-up here, do you know if it's used in any other federal programs, or is it a new designation, a new data set?
It's not a new data set, but I can't just say whether it's used in other federal programs. I do know that it's a tool in our toolbox to help describe the communities that you serve.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Great. And Julie, just to piggyback, as I'm building on this question, there's a database that is provided as part of the resource materials, and for some reason my browser has closed down at this point, but it's one of the resource tabs, I believe. Before I clicked on it, it was number 13. I will pull it up again, but it's this database that I just brought up in this workbook. And just a point of order, I've noticed that a few folks are trying to use the chat feature within our webinar here. We'd ask that you not do that, and please, understand if you can't, because of the acoustics or something, use your telephone to ask your question. We won't be able to respond to the questions that are coming through in the chat box, but I can see that there are a few of them. Just encourage anyone who is trying to use that feature to ask their questions, again, facilitated through Allison. Allison, do you have additional questions?
Yes, we do. Our next question is from Debbie Reed. Your line is open.
Hi, I have a question about the objective for development services. And my question is, if you're using that objective, can the use of funds include something other than operating costs for development services? For example, development services would be intended to increase lending. So could any of the FA award be used for loan capital?
Yes, the FA award could be used in any of the 5 eligible activity categories. So going back to some of the material earlier in the presentation, You can use your financial assistance award to support financial products, financial services for a regulated institution, development services, loan loss reserves, or capital reserves for a financial institution. So you could select that FA Objective 1-6 and then utilize part or all of the award in any of the eligible activity categories, so long as you still met the benchmarks for the number of development services that you're going to provide that will be included in your assistance agreement.
Yeah, so just to build on what Clint said, the FA award is not a project-based award, so we're not, the project, quote unquote, would be the development service. That's not true. It's like, it's an investment in your organization. You can use FA award dollars in any one of the eligible categories, and it doesn't have to directly tie to your FA objectives. Your FA objective can be completed using any available funds on your balance sheet.
Okay, thank you. That's clear.
Okay, and our next question is from Monique Quarterman. Your line is open.
Good afternoon. I have just a couple of questions, please. I noticed on the NOFA on page 11, they mention eligible financial services includes automated teller machines. Does this mean that the program can actually fund that equipment and renovation necessary to place that service in our target market?
Renovation is not an eligible activity according to the UAR, but buying the ATM is.
And also, just so I can go back and educate myself, the UAR stands for?
Uniform Administrative Requirements. It's the Office of Management and Budget, or OMB, guidance that dictates, provides guidance for all grant activities.
Thank you. And then my other question is, you mentioned in the presentation that the HFFI fund does not require a match. Does this mean that applicants can request grant funds from the CDFI program to make loans for healthy food business?
Yeah, the form of the award for HFFI will be grant. And Clint was just sharing the uses can be loan capital.
Awesome. And would we be so we wouldn't be expected to pay those funds back even if we're lending it to the community?
You're not expected to pay any of the funds back to the CDFI fund if you're lent.
The grant fund.
The grant funds.
The loan would be repaid on the standard promissory note of the standard loan product, but the financial assistance form of award that is a grant is a capital grant.
Awesome. Thank you. And then my other question is, does the CDFI program dictate the rate at which the matching funds must be spent? For example, is there any regulation that describes we must spend X amount of matching funds dollars by X amount of time?
No, you just have to make sure that you attest that the matching funds are directed towards an eligible FA activity. Candace, you want to build on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say we don't have any requirements on how you use the matching funds. Those requirements are set by the matching funds provider, so that's dictated by your relationship with that funder, not us. Like Amber said, the only requirement is that those matching funds, obviously they have to meet all of our eligibility criteria, but in terms of how you use those matching funds, we don't have any say in that.
Thank you. And then my last question is, if we wanted to use FA funds specifically for capital reserves, does that mean we would have to pay it back?
No, not unless it's not in a form of unless it's in a form of award of a loan.
Thank you.
Our next question is from Emily Kaminsky. Your line is open.
Thank you. I have two questions. One is regarding what qualifies as an eligible target market project. So on the certification side, we've run into an issue where it seems that there's an unwritten policy that commercial real estate projects are not eligible as target market projects for those of us who qualify under the low-income target population method. Is this just, well, I guess I should ask, is that how you understand it? And then also, is this just under certification or in the certification department an issue, or does this apply to the FA application when we're trying to identify which of our loans that we've made in the past 3 years actually qualify as LITP?
We cannot speak to the certification, but what we can say is that, we use what you report in the TLR, the transaction level report, to meet the definitions of what an eligible transaction is. So, I think there's guidance in the TLR that talks about the characteristics of the beneficiaries of the project, and whether that qualifies or not for to be be a loan towards a low-income targeted population if it isn't located in an investment area. So the definition of eligible market for anyone is essentially our basic pre-approved certification requirements. So if it qualifies under the investment area definition or other targeted population, for example, African American, Hispanic, or Native American, and or to a low income person or persons.
I see. So for us, we have a series of states, and we are only qualified as a CDFI under the low-income targeted population definition. And so for us, what we run into is we're being told that we can't count any commercial real estate projects at all, no matter whether the commercial real estate project has tenants that benefit low-income people. And so that's what I'm getting on the certification side, and I don't see that guidance or any clarification on the TLR. But it sounds like you're saying we can make our own.
It's based on the TLR. And to be clear, this eligible market is anywhere. So if you, for example, your target market is California, low-income targeted population, but you want to serve an eligible investment area in Oregon, that would count towards your FA activity.
We don't do investment areas, so for me that's irrelevant.
Well, I'm just saying, so say, for example, it was low-income person, or the happened to be in a high-poverty area. Like, I'm just trying to give you the broad swath. It doesn't have to be in the state that you are, or the targeted population that you qualified for.
Okay, because when I see capital T, capital M target market, to me that means what we're designating.
That's what I'm saying, it's and or. So, for example, there are CDFIs that have been qualified under the contiguous land area. So, for example, they served an investment area of 5 census tracts, and 4 of the census tracts are qualified, but 1 doesn't. Then that would be their target markets, but it wouldn't necessarily be the same as an eligible market. So, if you looked at a Venn diagram of all target markets that have been approved in eligible markets, there's like a 90% overlap, but there's a one little bubble that could be outside of the strict category of eligible market. And so that's why we do and or, and I think it's really important to highlight that that's a slash and or, because anything in the eligible market does count towards your FA objectives. While you have to maintain certification in that 60%, anything you do in an eligible market counts towards your FA objectives.
I see. So if we have not been approved for a particular state to operate in under certification, we can still count our activity, projected or historic, in that state.
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
I didn't understand that.
We care about low-income communities and people wherever you serve them.
Okay. Yeah, okay, got it. I have a second question. I apologize for taking time or extra time. and this is related to target market expansion. So we just submitted a target market expansion request. Maybe this is irrelevant now, but I suppose I'll ask the question anyway in case it is relevant. Do you expect to be responding or approving to target market expansion requests prior to the FA application, or maybe because the answer to my previous question is it doesn't matter, maybe it's irrelevant?
Yeah, so target market expansion is run separately from the CDFI FA application evaluation process. They have their own timelines, but it's actually what you said, it's actually irrelevant because we're asking for what is your activity in an eligible market, and if that activity is in an eligible market, regardless of whether you're approved for a target market modification accounts.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
As a friendly reminder, to ask a question on the phones, please press star 1 and record your first and last name. And to withdraw your question on the phones, you may press star 2. Our next question is from Monique Quarterman. Your line is open.
Thank you. I have a couple of additional questions. The first being, when it comes to attaching information to the application, I noticed that there is some financial information that needs to be attached. Does any of that actually include any quotes or information specifically on what we plan to purchase or services we plan to buy during the project term?
No.
Awesome. And then my second question, I was reading something in the NOFA under the matching funds area that discussed interest that's earned on matching funds. If matching funds earn interest during the project period, is there a mechanism by which we have to report that and or return that?
So I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about in terms of matching funds, but there is a section that says if you put your FA award into a savings account and you do not put that money towards an eligible activity and you earn more than $750 in interest on that, you have to remit that to HHS.
Thank you. That answers my question. I appreciate it.
And we have no further questions at this time.
So this is Amber. You know, while we're waiting for her to tee up some questions, we've got a lot of questions about the new minimum portfolio outstanding size. So I want to make sure that everybody knows that, you know, if you're a SECA, you can apply for financial assistance or technical assistance. And if, for example, you don't have a minimum portfolio outstanding of $466,000 ish, then you can still apply for TA. Everyone is, you know, generally everybody is going to, your certified CDFI is going to be able to apply for some form of assistance from the CDFI fund.
Any additional questions, Allison, on the line?
Yes, we just got a few more. Our next question, I really do apologize. I was not able to decipher your name. If you press star 1, your line is open.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi.
Yes, hi. So I have a question about the FA objective of the new product. So our CDFI has had a pilot project around an energy efficiency loan, but our borrower has specifically been for-profit market rate housing, market rate housing, multifamily. And we've become aware in our target market that really we need to be looking at an energy efficiency, low interest, you know, like really flexible terms product for developers who are developing affordable housing not market rate, because those are the customers that really we found through our research can really benefit from this energy efficiency improvements. And when I talk about affordable, I mean 80 to 100% of AMI. So I am wondering if it is a new product, if the borrower is changing. So, and the product itself, like the housing product, is different. It's not market rate housing, it's affordable housing. Some of the terms that, it's a new pot of money, but for our pilot that we just used with the market rate housing, it's just a little over 5% of our portfolio. So to us, it feels like a new product because it's a new borrower, it's a new geography, different things like that. But we do have a pilot, so I'm curious if you have any insight on that.
Are the terms of the product changing at all, or is it just who you're trying to market to?
The terms will change because, the source of capital is different. Hopefully FA will be part of that source, but, the terms will change.
It's a really great question. I think that there needs to be a distinction in the terms or other characteristics of a product to say that you're expanding your, for example, underwriting to include more or to make it more available to the communities, underserved or eligible communities. So there needs to be something different about it that expands the target, the audience, but also the terms of the product, that you're not just talking about a market. Like you're not just marketing to someone else, that's not a new product. The other thing that you mentioned is new geography. That could be something that you want to explore as well. Instead of thinking about it in terms of product, you could think about it in terms of county level geography.
And I mean, if it's a play where it's, maybe it's an increased risk of underwriting, higher risk end asset type or something, but it sounds like, the easier option in just to think about out loud is if you're increasing the volume of an existing product, that is probably, easier for you to talk about because, again, look through the reviewer guidance in step 3, and this is where you're making your business plan case, and you'll want to be sure that it's clear that you're applying under the correct FA objective appropriate to the proposed activity.
Yeah, and
so if it's really an expansion of broadening the market for an existing product, you're increasing the volume. Those are some of the considerations you'd want to think through.
Yeah, and when you think about increased volume, that's not just a specific line of business, it's your entire lending. So if you did, for example, $1 million over the course of the last 3 historic years in eligible markets, and then you request $1 million FA award, then you need to project $2 million, a minimum of $2 million of total lending into an eligible market for your FA objective for increased volume. And again, it wouldn't be associated with this product, but you can say like driving this increase is additional marketing to XYZ consumers or whatnot. And again, we talked about this earlier, but there's no preference for choosing one FA objective over another, and there's no preference for projecting crazy growth as opposed to, just meeting the minimums as long as it's aligned with your business model. So we're really looking at your historic activity as compared to your projections and your narrative. It's all being evaluated hand in glove, and it's not being evaluated by you getting more points by having 20% increase or something like that. It doesn't make sense for the overarching business model and plan as described in your narrative and your projections.
Thank you.
Our next question is from Dana Kokoban. Your line is open.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Dana. Yeah, you sound great.
Hi, great. So I have a question about the eligible uses. We're a nonprofit CECA loan fund, and we're considering getting a warehouse line of credit to fund first mortgages. The line of credit will come through a local federal credit union. And we were thinking of using the FA award as a cash deposit guarantee. Would that be an eligible use? Hello?
So I would think that you really need to look at the Candace, go.
Sorry.
Oh, is that Candace? Were you trying to talk?
No, this is Donna.
Okay. So you really need to look at the definition of financial products, financial services, loan loss reserves, and development services and capital reserves. I think we need to look at the definition, and we couldn't provide that answer over the phone. So please submit a service request on this, and we'll be more than happy to go and help you digest the definitions of the eligible activities.
All right, thank you.
And we have no further questions on the phones at this time.
Okay, well, hold on for another minute or two. We know our industry loves questions, and we love being here to support everyone putting together their applications. Hold the line for a couple more minutes. Put up these dates again. Is there anything else, Ruth or Clint, to cover? Candace or Elizabeth? Allison, anyone join us? Yep.
We still have no further questions.
Okay, well, oops, was somebody chiming in?
This is Elizabeth. I was just going to say thank you to all the CDFIs for all the great work you do in the field, and echo Andrew's sentiment that we want to be as helpful as possible in preparing your applications for 2020.
Fantastic. Well, really want to appreciate everyone joining us today for this, again, the third of a series of 5 webinars. We've got the dates up there. Please reach out with service requests through AMIS. We're happy to answer any additional questions that come in. And thanks, everyone, for your participation. With that, we'll adjourn today's call.
Thank you for your participation. This now concludes today's conference. All lines may disconnect at this time.